Hi, it's John Hawthorne here from Delaware Valley Outdoors. We're at the Greater Philadelphia Outdoor Sports Show here at the Oaks. I'm going to get it right one of these times. And I'm with what has become a good friend of mine, Brian Imicus from Brian's Guide Service. Brian, good to see you.
Good to see you, John.
Brian and I fished together twice last year. We were supposed to have a trip earlier in the year where we were going to go for 2 days, and we had some bad weather, and that really one thing shows how good a guide you are. You called me and you said don't come because the fish weren't there, and that's really impressive, so I really appreciated that. We had a one-day striper where we caught, I think, 7, and then we came back about a month later where we absolutely slaughtered the smallmouth, absolutely killed them in the river. Why don't you just tell me real quickly, where are you generally fishing for stripers and where are you fishing for smallmouth?
Okay, good question. I'm very fortunate. I live on the upper Chesapeake Bay. I live in Perryville, which is on the Northeast River, which is a river that feeds into the top of the Chesapeake Bay. And where we were fishing for stripers was right outside of Havre de Grace, Maryland, the headwaters of what's called the Susquehanna Flats. And we were fishing down there during the catch and release season. I call it the trophy season.
Right.
Because that's when you get the big females coming up.
I think we had 2 that were over 20 pounds that day.
You did.
And a couple in 17, 18-pound range.
And last year that's the most difficult fishing spring I've ever encountered in my life because of all the rains and the storms we had. To put it in perspective, the Susquehanna River Valley normal rain flow for April over years and decades is 3 inches. We had over 9 inches of rain in the month of April. That doesn't count March or May.
Wow. Okay. I know you had told me that the water clarity we had there, I kind of called it a stain, but you really thought it was more like muddy.
Oh, it was.
It was pretty nasty.
Yeah, because what happens, the Susquehanna River, that starts the Chesapeake Bay. And all the way from New York, the river was muddy. And we just collected it all down where we were fishing. And that day we went out, quite frankly, I normally don't fish with cut or live bait, but when the water's muddy like that, I just know from experience that you can forget casting with artificial baits. Forget it. You're not going to get bit. So I said, hey, here's what we got to do. We got to anchor up. We're going to put on fresh cut herring, which is what we did, and we had a successful day. We caught 7 fish, and I would also suspect we had a few more pickups.
Yeah, we had a couple runoffs and I think we had a couple hook that we didn't get in.
Yeah,
which we had a great day. The wind was howling and it was freezing cold, but man, we caught some fish.
Yeah, and that's striper weather.
Yeah.
You just, early in the year, you don't get nice 70, 80 degree days usually.
Right.
But when you catch a 20-pound striper, it really doesn't matter how cold it is.
What do you consider to be like your key times of year for that trophy striper time?
Anytime March, April. March is questionable, though, because you can have some really lousy cold weather.
Right.
April's probably the best month because you start getting good weather, and that's when the big females are there.
Yeah. Now, we've had a very mild winter here. Do you expect that might make things be a little bit sooner? Like, when will you actually start going out and hitting the water and trying to catch some fish?
Probably next month.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you'll be out in March to see if you can catch them.
Depending on the weather. You're right. It has been so unpredictably warm. Who knows? The month of March, we could have 5 snowstorms.
Don't say that. Knock on wood.
I know. It's just you've got to be careful with the weather. And the thing about going out into the flats there, fishing for stripers, that can be some big water.
Right.
And if you've got a 20-mile-an-hour wind, it means you've got 3-4 foot waves. And I can tell you, when the water's 35, 40 degrees, you don't want to take spray. It's a very uncomfortable day. And I'm getting too old for that.
Now let's fast forward up into May, because I think our smallmouth trip was second week of May.
Sounds about right.
And
which we had to cancel and postpone.
Right, and it ended up we hit it just about perfect. The weather started getting nice, and I think we boated like 30 or 40 fish that day.
Yeah, and I remember, that last spring, what I had to contend with more than anything was a raging river where it was flat out unsafe to fish.
Right.
Because there was so much current. My trolling motor wouldn't go through it, and I've got a powerful trolling motor.
Now, tell me real quick, where were we on the Susquehanna?
We launched at a place called Muddy Run.
Okay, so we're in Pennsylvania now.
We launched out of Pennsylvania, just below the Holtwood Bridge Dam.
Okay.
For the viewers out there, if you look on the map and find Quarryville, Pennsylvania, we went across 372 to the west side of the river.
Okay.
And
I know one of the things that I was really surprised about was the depth of the water there. You were in a prop boat. You were not in a jet boat, correct?
Yeah.
And I know because some certain spots on the Susquehanna, like up near Harrisburg, I mean, it's jet boats only.
it's shallow. The deepest water might be 8-10 foot up.
But
above.
down near Muddy Run, there's water down there. How deep?
Oh, there's a 100-foot channel.
Wow.
And the other thing is, if I had 5 boats, I'd have a jet boat. But I also use that boat for crabbing in the summertime, and I don't want a jet boat for that. But I learned the hard way of where I can run the motor and where I can't. So I have no problems running a regular prop up there.
Right.
Okay.
Cool.
And that day we hit it, if my memory serves me right, I was out with a couple other customers the day before, and the water was just starting to clear and the current was starting to slow down, and we hadn't done anything. And I'm thinking I called you that afternoon. I says, John, I don't know if you want to come because we didn't do anything, and you and your dad were committed, and you said, we're coming. And I says, okay, we'll give it the best shot. And
yeah, we lit them up.
We lit them up. The fish were there. And your dad caught the biggest smallie of his life that day?
Yeah, I think he caught one just about 5 pounds or darn close to it. So it's deceiving for what appears to be somewhat kind of smaller-ish water. We're not talking Lake Erie here or Dale Hollow. Smaller water that holds 3 and 4 pound smallmouth pretty routinely.
That fishery for around here, I've had fellows who fish the Delaware River for smallmouth, and they say we catch a ton of smallmouth, but nothing, no size.
What we have at some Bob and I fish, we're catching 12, 14 inches. You catch a 16-inch fish, wow, that's something to write home about, but you're catching those fish routinely.
Yeah, in that springtime, you got about a 4 or 5 week period in there.
Give me that 4 or 5 week period. What's your typical, what your ideal time is if you're looking?
I'm going to say roughly mid-April, second, third week of May.
Okay.
But what will happen every year, the weatherman, he plays a role in this, and it may change a week or so one way or the other.
Sure.
Okay.
But as I mentioned earlier, if you're not catching fish or the weather's bad, you're going to call your clients and try to reschedule as best you can.
Yeah, people, A, they're paying good money. B, they're taking time off. And I've hired guides over the years, and I hate to say it, I've only had one good experience out of maybe 4. It's just disgusting.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do that to somebody.
Right. And I don't think you hardly fished at all. I think in that entire smallmouth trip, I think you only caught like 2 because you spend the time guiding for us, which is terrific. I've certainly been with a bunch of guides who fish as much as the clients do and catch as many fish as the clients do, and I personally don't agree with that. The clients are there to catch the fish. The guide is there to point to them where. And you do a great job at that.
And you know what? I know I can catch them. I'm going to wave my flag a little bit. I know I can catch them, okay? But to take people up there who don't fish all the time and to see them catch fish and like your dad to get lit up over catching a big fish, I get as much or more kick out of that. I really do.
Well, that's awesome. We've talked smallies. We've talked stripers. What other fishing opportunities does your guide service offer?
Well, I also guide for largemouth bass down in the upper Chesapeake all throughout the year. Okay. Something I'm just getting into, I'm going to call it perch jerking.
Perch jerking.
Perch jerking.
What type of perch are we talking about?
Yellow perch.
Yellow perch, okay.
There is a heck of a yellow perch fishery in the bay. Okay, and what happens, they come up to the Susquehanna River, the Northeast River in the winter, and they spawn. I don't know enough about them. They spawn in February or early March, okay? And to give you an example, last Friday I was out with Barry, who you met earlier. We caught over 200 yellow perch in a day.
Wow.
Okay. Most of them were 6, 8 inches,
Right.
okay? But we also put 29 keepers in the boat, and they've got to be over 9 inches. And I don't eat fish as much
Right.
as I fish for them.
Perch is supposed to be pretty good eating, though.
They're supposed to be the premier.
Yeah, perch and walleyes, they're
And
related.
walleye is in the perch family,
Right.
I understand, okay? But some of these perch are 12, 13 inches, and they're fat. I mean, really, they're an impressive-looking perch.
How about it?
Okay.
The bad thing about it, you go out fishing this time of year, even if it's 50 degrees on land, you get on the water that's 35 or 37 degrees and there's a breeze.
Yeah.
Well, you're sitting on top of an ice chest. Okay.
You got to be prepared.
You got to be prepared. You know, you can't wear too much clothing.
Right.
The other thing I've been doing, those toe heaters, I put them in my feet, and the hand heaters, I put them in my pockets. And if the hands get too cold, you put them in there for a little bit when the fish aren't biting. but I'm telling you, for the winter time, it's a lot of fun to go
So
out
if
there.
someone likes panfish or specifically, perch, you're looking to have some potentially really good days.
Oh yeah.
And bring a lot of fish in the boat.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
they just have to be willing to put up with the cold. It's that simple, you know. It's not like ice fishing where you're in a some type
Right,
of
a shack or a shanty
shack
with a little heater.
and
Right.
a little bottle of something to keep you warm.
You're in a boat exposed to the elements.
You bet you are.
Now, Brian, if someone wanted to get in touch with you to arrange a trip, do you offer half-day trips, full-day trips?
Okay.
How do they get in touch with you?
Good question. The first thing they can do is give me a call. You can get on my website. I think it's www.brians, G as in God, S as in service, .com.
BriansGS.com.
Yes.
Okay.
My phone number's on there.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. And I'm
or-
sure we can probably post a link because I know Bob has fished with you before. I've fished with you before. Both of us have had great trips, great experiences.
Yeah, and if you can post a link where somebody can get it
Yeah.
easily, that'd be great.
Okay, terrific. Brian, I really appreciate you stopping
My
by. our
pleasure,
booth.
John.
Okay. From the Greater Philadelphia Sports Show, I'm John Hawthorne from DVO.